Well, thanks everybody for joining the FullStack How'd You Do That session. Today, Santiago is going to be presenting a script that he has put together to help manage component documentation process. So, Santi, over to you, and go ahead and share your screen and get started.
So first for context, we're working on the Vega design system, this design system for MGM resorts. And one of the tools that the design system has is design tokens. So design tokens inside the design system allows to streamline the process between design and development. So every kind of design decision, such as color, typography, sizing, spacing, and that kind of things, have a design token assigned to them. So developers can use that design token in their implementation. So part of the design process within the team is whenever we are creating new components in Figma, we have to create documentation for that component. I have my component here, and we use a ShapeSpecs plugin to create the documentation for us. I'll run that, and this creates this test component documentation here. So you can see the page that creates. So this plugin is very useful because it allows you to really quickly document colors, sizing, and that kind of stuff. So within this process, and because we need to use design tokens, one of the things that we needed to do here is replacing these values, these colors that are based on the Figma styles, with the value of the token. So let's say we have border color gray. Before the script that I wrote, designers need to go here to the design system, design tokens documentation, and find semantic tokens for that color. So I have to explore this documentation and look, for example, I think I had gray 100. This is gray 100, so that would be foreground subtle. So I need to come here and replace this gray 100 with foreground subtle. That's the name of the token in the design system. So if you can imagine doing this with every single value here, because there's also tokens for border weight, the border radius, opacity, height, width, etc. This can become overwhelming in time, and especially if you have a very big component that has many different variants, for example, or you need to document different components inside the same flow. This can become a mess trying to grab whatever token it's needed for each of the values. So yeah, when I was told that was with what we were supposed to do, I thought like maybe not. Maybe there's some way that we can do that faster. So that's when I thought about writing the script. That I have previous experience with plugins, so I thought that this was something that we could use, like leverage Figma capabilities to just replace these values automatically. So I asked the design system team for the design tokens JSON. That's a file where all the design tokens are documented or stated. And the way the script works is that it goes, let me show, I think I have a diagram here, yeah. So basically the workflow would be this. You would generate the docs running a ShapeSpecs plugin. You will select the text layer to replace. So in this case, let's say it's border radius, for example, that we need to replace. And the script, you will have different available tasks for whatever design choice you want to replace. So this is border radius. I will use the plugin is called show me the token, and I want to replace the radius value. So I'm going to select radius. It's going to run show me the token behind the scenes, and it's going to scan those design tokens. So this is an example of how that JSON would look. So we have border radius component XL, it's the value 16. So it's gonna match that particular value that I selected here, that was 16, and it's gonna find which border radius token has that value of 16. So if the token is found, so it's not, if it's not found, it would just throw an error that no token found for that value. If it's found, it will import a token batch, that's this component here, and it will add the name of that token with the raw value. So the name of that token is border radius component XL 16 pixels. So this allows for designers to not having to go back and forth within the design tokens documentation to try to find a token that's suitable for their needs. And that's how it gets replaced. So you can see this in the work. So let's say we need to replace background color. So I'm gonna go for show me token background color. And oh, sorry, it's this one. Background color here. And it's gonna replace that with the correct token. So it's background surface white. I can do the same for this foreground token. And one of the advantages that this has is that I can select multiple layers at a time for the same property. So border color, I know it's foreground color, text color is foreground color, text color is foreground color too. So I can select the three of them and just run foreground color and show me the token. And that will replace that specific value with that token. So for this background color, I can do the same, again, background color. So here, there's an added ability here in the script is that it will use, if there isn't a semantic token for that value, it would add instead the core token. But it will warn you that this is a core token. Make sure that you are using semantic tokens whenever possible. But if you're sure that this should be the core token, you can just change the value of this inserted component to the default state. In case that you're sure that that's the value that you need to do. For example, here in this text color, the plugin found two possible tokens for that value here. So you could use either error default token or the core token red 16. Because we want to avoid using core tokens here, I will just delete this and leave the semantic token here. So that's for color, for example, but let's go here into the menu. Plugins, I have this in development. These are all the available properties right now that the plugin can work with. And these are all tokens that are in the design system documentation. So you can do that for spacing, sizing, radius, border width, opacity, background color, etc. So the only drawback here is that you cannot select all the values and replace them for the corresponding design choice or corresponding property. I cannot select border weight, and border radius and expect to be correctly replace this one for border weight and this one for border radius. I will have to do one property at a time. So I want to select first only border radius and run border. I think I have that as a corner radius. I can't remember. Oh, it's only radius. So here, yeah, I can replace the border radius for that. I can do the same for height and width, for example. That will be sizing. And yeah, especially in layout, it's very useful because all of these are spacing tokens. So I have item spacing, padding, item spacing here, and item spacing here. And I could just run show me token and spacing. And that would replace specifically the spacing component. And yeah, I have a little video that how much time you can save by, or the team in MGM can save by doing this. And it's up down to 68% of time that you can save just running the script. So above you have the workflow going back and forth within the documentation, and this is just replacing the component with the script down here. So as you can see, you can spend 19 seconds just replacing that token with the script versus trying to manually replace that token going back and forth within the documentation. And so if you're spending 8 hours, for example, creating those tokens or replacing those tokens, you can now with the script spend down to 2.5 hours in total. So it's a very nice tool to help streamline this documentation process and make this faster. So also designers can kind of focus on the most important things within the improvement of the user experience. And that's it. Do you have any questions, observations?
Great. I mean, it seems like it's a huge time saver for you. I'm curious how was the process in actually putting together the script? I mean, was that fairly complicated for you? Was there a lot of trial and error, or did it come together pretty easily?
I think I come pretty easily. The first properties. One of the most complicated stuff was colors, because I had to search colors between semantic tokens and core tokens, and understanding like when it was semantic and when it was the core token. I think that was one of the toughest stuff. But knowing how the API, the Figma API works, it was a bit easier to put it all together. One of the things that I like to do first before writing a plugin or a script is using another plugin that's called Scripter. And this plugin allows you to test code. I think actually have some of this. Yeah, I think this was the first. This code that you see here is the first iteration of that, like the first trial and error that I did for making sure I was doing this correctly. And it's basically a plugin that you can write any code, any JavaScript code that uses the Figma API, and you can try it out quickly. Like you don't have to create a full development project to build the plugin, but you can just type code here and test it out and make sure that you're doing things correctly.
Great. And I'm curious what would be your first step in putting together and actually writing this plugin? Is there any sort of boilerplate, or are you starting essentially from just an empty page, just write JavaScript, go?
There's actually a kind of a framework someone created. Let me see if I can find the name here. So this is actually like the source code of this. These are the tokens, the JSON of those tokens. And here's a script for every task, for every property. So for background color, border width, and that, and all of those. And the framework is called Create Figma Plugin, and there's documentation around that. This one. So yeah, some guy created this framework that it makes it really quick to start just coding the things you need instead of worrying about the structure of the project. I'm gonna share that link in the chat, so if you want to check it out.
Okay, great. And then I've got one more question, just more generally in terms of documentation. I know I've seen projects and teams where a designer spends a lot of time putting together documentation, and it's either not exactly what the developers need or want, so they just ignore it, or the developers just think, I'll just use the dev mode and spec tools and just figure it out myself. What benefit have you seen from putting together these detailed documentations to the development team, and how has the process been in collaborating with them and making sure you give them what they need?
Yeah, I think this is specifically works really well for the token part. At least before, the idea of the design system team is also moving towards variables in Figma, but for now they're using Figma tokens, I think it's called, the plugin. So the only way to actually kind of document the actual tokens that developers need to use is by using these tools. because you cannot see like tokens in the dev mode, because it's not a native feature. Is not a native feature of Figma currently. So you will have to use variables. But because this was done about more than a year ago, so they used a Figma tokens plugin that's not native to Figma, so it's not connected to variables. So that's why this documentation is needed in this case. So I think it works pretty well for specifically this case. I do agree that maybe like for things like layout, for example, like spacing between things, there doesn't necessarily require tokens. Inspect mode or dev mode, I think it works generally best. They're trying to, because as you said, you could spend a lot of time just doing documentation that you could easily inspect with the view mode in Figma.
Great. And if other designers wanted to try this out, is there a way that they can do that, or does this only work with the Vega design system?
Currently just Vega design system, yeah, because it looks specifically into this Vega design system tokens.
Great. Well, any questions from anyone else, or comments, feedback, anything?
Yes. First, Santiago, amazing job. This looks like a lifesaver for the whole team. And I've always been curious about how Figma plugins are built. So thanks for showing us your process. Great job.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Anyone else? We're all just stunned, at a loss for words for how much time Santi is saving.
Yes, only one. It is necessary to know how to develop to make these plugins, or like a developer. So guys like me that doesn't have any knowledge about the programming can do it, this type of plugins.
I think you can. Obviously, like the learning curve would be a little bit steeper, but using, for example, the plugin that I show you about Scripter, you can read the Figma plugin documentation, the Figma API documentation, that it's very well documented, so you can get started with that and understanding how you could, for example, select a layer or read the current selection of the layer. And it's basically just copying what the documentation has, and you can run that in the Scripter plugin and test it out. And you can start like that and doing small things like changing the color or moving something 2 pixels to the right, for example. That's pretty easy, just require like a couple of lines to do that, and you can get started like that. And I think with the time, if you do that like every day or once a week, with time you will get better at it, and you will start to understand how in the end it works. And I think that the fun thing about this is when you start doing a lot of these things, then you start to see opportunities every time for this kind of automation things, which is really cool. So if you start doing that today or tomorrow and start to do it every week, I think in about 3 months, for example, you're gonna understand, I can do these things instead of doing manually. I can use the Figma API to do this faster and save a lot of time. I'll share the Figma documentation API too, so you can read that.
This, since optimizing time in this type of operational task is much better than dedicate lots of time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of plugins already that to do that for you. But kind of the good thing of understanding that is maybe there are some specific tasks that are very specific to teams, internal teams, that you wouldn't find in plugins because they're very general. And this is this plugin, for example, they showed me the token script is an example of that, because we needed to specifically read our design tokens. So yeah, it's a very good tool if you have it.
Yeah, thank you, Santiago, and congratulations for the result.
Awesome. Well, Santi, thank you very much for presenting that, and thank you everyone for joining, and have a great weekend. See y'all later.